Hey everybody, Kenny E, Black Iron Tri. Just wrapping up a swim here in my first week back to real training. Mostly drills today, so slow laps. But it's all about focusing on technique and getting certain body movements down to a science. So got that in, feeling really good about it. Finally gonna get to a race recap of Ironman California. It was quite the day. But just to keep in mind, I don't have a lot of footage. I mentioned this before because I don't have a professional videographer to follow me around during the race. But what I do have, I'll post. Mostly I want to talk about what the race was about how the swim and bike and run all went, and maybe even get a little bit into the one tragedy I had, the one problem I had with my tire the day before the race. Of course, if you don't have an issue the day before the race, you ain't racing. That's just the way, that's Murphy's Law. You gotta be prepared for that. You gotta adapt. Anyway, let's get into it. This is Ironman California race recap. Hey everybody, it's Kenny E here. Finally back from an extended vacation / break / recovery / sloughing off. And I'm finally gonna give you guys a race day recap of Ironman California 2025, which at this point is about 6 weeks ago. I'm sitting here in Florida right now on Thanksgiving Day, visiting my parents who are house sitting a beautiful home in Ormond Beach. And thought I'd take this opportunity to try to get this recorded and out to you. So just to start off, I gotta say, the race was definitely a fun time, great day. The weekend was fantastic. The weather was spectacular. And I was probably in the best shape I've ever been in for a race of this length. So no complaints on any of those fronts. First, let me start off by saying it was a fantastic weekend, Ironman California. The whole time there was great. We had a great Airbnb that definitely served our purposes. That was really close, like walking distance, definitely jogging distance to transition. And I've put up a video already of the week leading up to that and what kind of went down the day before the race. But I wanted to give a breakdown of actual race day and how it impacted things like my time, which I made it very clear I wasn't going to be paying attention to time during the race, but obviously afterwards you're looking at your time and what impacted and things that went right, went wrong. But just as a general statement, the race was great. Would I do it again? There's a lot of logistics involved with going that far for a race. And for an Ironman, it's worth it. Definitely was worth the logistics, but I'm trying to be done with full distance Ironman. Trying. Here I go. I'm already back moonwalking on that. So before I get into the actual day, I want to talk a little bit about the day before, a couple days before, because I did get questions on things like what actually went wrong with my wheel, my tire. Like I mentioned before, anything can go wrong on race day and the time leading up to it. A lot of things can impact your time. A lot of things can impact how ready you are. And I had my own version of that just on the 2 days before the race. So 2 days before the race, on Friday, we had a swim practice, which I showed a video of before. They let you get into the river to kind of test it out, and I got to try out my wetsuit, make sure everything was working there. My swim booties, and I had a neoprene cap under my swim cap because I wanted it to be, as comfortable as possible because I'd been told the water was cold, was wetsuit mandatory. That was fantastic. Practice swim was great. All the gear I had worked great. And after that, we went back to I'd done a practice ride that day as well. I believe that was the same day. And got back to the Airbnb. And as I do as a habit, I'll always squeeze my tires to see how they're feeling because, of course, Saturday, we have to check our bikes in for the race. You have to turn in your bike, put it at racket the day before the race. So As I went and checked my tires, the front tire was essentially flat. This was not, I did not expect that. That was, I figured, like, well, what the hell happened between riding it and what did I do that flattened it? If there was going to be a problem, it should have shown up before I got on it for the practice ride. And so I took it to, I couldn't get air, couldn't get it to hold air. So I took it to a place called Mike's Bikes, which apparently is the place in Sacramento for bike stuff. And I didn't get there until Saturday. I couldn't take it Friday because I didn't find this problem until they were closing. So that just added pressure to have to get things done early on Saturday because to have to turn your bike in. Naturally, because I'm not the only person there was this long line of people waiting to get stuff done. But I took my wheel in, and just to cut to the chase, it turns out there was a bubble in the tire right at the rim, which is where it was losing air. So it wasn't losing air, it wasn't a puncture. There was a bubble which didn't allow the tire to clinch on to the rim. I run tubeless, as I may have mentioned before, which means you've got all that stuff inside to help seal it if you do happen to get a puncture, but this was not any of that. The bubble wouldn't allow the tire to seat properly, and I had to think about what the heck could that have happened. As it turns out, it occurred to me that I had hit a rock on October 4th on the Silver Comet Trail. And I remember hitting that rock and thinking it felt like I had run over a curb at full speed. It was an extremely hard hit, so much so that I stopped the bike, checked the tire, it was still tight, no problems. And I ended up putting 70 miles on. I thought I may have cracked my rim, to be honest about it. It was just that hard of a hit. But everything was working fine. I ended up putting 70 miles on the bike that day. And I rode it 3 times after that, including a week later doing like a 56 or something like that mile ride, and no issues. So I was really okay with, deflating it and getting it all packed up and shipped off. And it turns out that it just took a while for this bubble to work its way into being a problem. So here I had an issue, a significant event on the tire 2 weeks before the race, and it didn't show itself until less than 24 hours before I was supposed to rack my bike. Fortunately, Mike's Bikes had my exact tire, Continental, what do they call it? Continental GS, whatever. It's a Grand Prix GP, Grand Prix STR, which stands for tubeless ready, 25 millimeter, perfect. So that tire generally runs about $100, plus I had to pay them to mount it and fill it and the whole bit with the sealant. So $140 later, I'm good as gold, and we get to get back to regular. So that's what happened with that tire and with that wheel. But as it turns out, everything, we got it fixed and got it racked. And now the rest of Saturday is about just final prep, right? You've already turned in, when you rack your bike, you also turn in your bike bag and your run bag. So as a reminder, the bike bag is a blue bag where you put the gear you're going to use for your bike, and you turn that in when you rack your bike. And the volunteers take it and they line it up where you're going to pick it up after you get out of the swim. And run bag is a red bag where you put all the stuff you're going to use for your run. So the bike, that's your helmet, your cycling shoes or whatever. And for the run bag, that's your run cap, your bib, whatever your running shoes, obviously. And all that goes in your run bag, and you give those to the volunteers. Where I should have been paying attention is that they, instead of taking our run bag, they took our bike bag and they lined them up, and they said, and by the way, on race morning, you will have access to these bags if you have to add anything, take anything out, whatever. But they told us to put our run bags by our bikes. Now, why this was a little bit strange is that generally in these full Ironman, they have what's called bike catchers. A bike catcher is a volunteer who takes your bike from you as you come off the ride. And those are very helpful because you just finished 112 miles, you're thinking about your run transition. But in most triathlons that aren't full Ironman, and even in full Ironman, you rack your own bike. So you come off the bike, you go into what's called bike in, and you rack your own bike, and your run gear is at your bike. So that's where they told us to put our run gear. That should have given me an indication it wasn't going to be a bike catcher. It really didn't make that big of a difference. If you do triathlon long enough, you're used to hopping off your bike and running to rack it and changing at the bike into your run gear. The difference is it's a bag. So I'll get into that in a second as we talk about the actual race day. So let's get into what happened on race day. Race morning, it's, you get up, hopefully you've had some sleep the night before. A lot of times people do not get to sleep. They don't sleep the night before a race because of nerves, because of excitement, because of whatever, mostly nerves. This time I was fortunate. I was actually able to get some sleep, which was fantastic. My buddy Mark, who raced with me, not as lucky as me. He didn't get as much sleep. I think he was up every 20 minutes or something, every half hour to use the washroom or whatever. But they tell you to try to get as much sleep as you can 2 nights before the race, because a lot of people, including pros, it's tough to sleep the night before the race. So you get up in the morning, you're checking the night before you've done all the prep, you've done all your nutrition prep. I should mention that, is that Saturday night, you're getting all your nutrition and everything ready for the next day. And you're gonna carry all of that to put with your gear, with your bike and what have you. And including whatever you're gonna put in your personal needs bag. They used to call this a special needs bag. They changed the name to personal needs bag. I'm not 100% sure why. I have my suspicions, but we'll leave it at that. And the personal needs bags are 2 bags that they give you, one for halfway through the bike and one for halfway through the run. And it's a great thing to have, because you can then put any additional nutrition you need, any backup gear you might need, backup CO2 cartridges, whatever, in this personal needs bag. And then it's available to you as you get halfway through the bike and the run. The thing about those bags though is whatever is in those bags, after you've used them, you never see again. So if you're switching out bottles, be prepared to lose those bottles. Anything you leave in that bag that you don't take with you, any nutrition, things like any hot shot or whatever, or salt or sodium, whatever you have in that bag, it goes away. You never see it again. But it's a very useful bag to have in a race of this length. So you prep those bags the night before, you prep your nutrition that you're gonna have to start your bike and to start your run. And then you head out. My partner in crime and my buddy's son, they were taking care of us. They drove us to transition, where we handed in our personal needs bags, checked our bikes one last time, and then you catch a bus to the swim start. Anytime you're doing a point-to-point swim, like a river swim, the start of the swim is 2.5 miles, basically 2.5 miles away from transition. And so they have a bus that takes the athletes. I think I did a race in 2017 in Chattanooga where they actually would let spectators get on the bus as well, so they could watch people start the swim. I think they've stopped that just in general. The last couple of races I went to that were point to point, which really was Chattanooga in 2018 and 2021, they did not allow spectators to get on the bus. It's certainly not in 2021, and certainly not in this race in California. In fact, in California, they said they didn't want spectators at the beginning of the swim at all. I don't know if anybody drove themselves out there or what. I don't remember seeing a lot of spectators. It was mostly athletes. You take the bus, you get on the bus, and once you get to the swim start, everybody's putting on their wetsuits and getting ready to line up to get into the water. So this is an important thing. I may have mentioned this before. It's an interesting aspect of Ironman, of triathlon in general. In a wetsuit swim, and maybe in regular swim, but certainly in a wetsuit swim, a lot of athletes will urinate in their suits. And when I say a lot, I mean a whole lot. Just as a note, I have never been comfortable with that. Side story here, when I used to train indoors with my friends in Chicago, when we used to train cycling, I would always get kind of teased that I'd show up smelling like I just got out of the shower because I'm very self-conscious about smelling bad. And that's my issue. I'm not putting that on anybody else. But the idea of using the bathroom on myself prior to getting into a race or starting a race or even during a race doesn't sit well with me. But it is extremely common. And the idea, I think, is that one, it creates warmth inside, because if you're wearing a wetsuit, it's generally because you're dealing with some colder water. It also creates a sense of comfort, I'm told. And in fact, as we're standing in line, you remember I'm wearing booties, rubber neoprene booties along my neoprene cap. I see a guy standing in front of us, because you're really close together, and I see the water trickling out the bottom of his suit. I'm sure he was not the only guy doing that. And it's also said that in a triathlon like this, if you're in a wetsuit, if you're gonna take on water like get water in your mouth, try not to do it at the beginning of the race, because it's a cesspool. Triathlon can be a nasty sport, but it's part of the environment, it's part of the race, it's part of the sport. So just things to keep in mind. That said, part of the reason we had the practice swim was so that we could get a feel for how cold the water was going to be. I remember running into an athlete at the airport who had done this race before, and she said, I was asking her, is the water really that cold? She said, it's cold, but you're not in it long because of the current, so it's not so bad. I'm like, cool. And then when we did the practice swim on Friday, yeah, it was chilly. The water was chilly, and but you're in a wetsuit. Like I said, I had on booties, I had on neoprene cap. I felt comfortable and confident that I'd be okay. So as we start to get into the water, as I jump in the water, I'm like, wait a minute, this is cold, but it's not as cold as I thought it was going to be. I don't think it was even as cold as the practice swim we did on Friday. I said, this isn't going to be bad at all. And so off I went. Off I did, started my swim. Felt good, felt full of energy. We passed some guys who were grabbing on to like the second buoy, and which is maybe 200 yards out. And I'm thinking, if you're tired now, you're gonna have a very short day. You're not gonna have a long day, you're gonna have a short day, because your race is gonna be over very quickly. But the only snafu I would say we ran into was, as I came to, the way this race goes is, you start off in the American River, and then it joins the Sacramento River at a 90-degree turn, and then you take that into where transition will be. The buoy at that turn was a different color than the rest of the buoys to let you know you're going to be making a turn. As I'm approaching it, I sight the buoy, and I'm trying to tell you to keep all the buoys to your left. I sight it again, and it's moved. It's moved to the right. And I'm thinking, I must be imagining, because I just saw this thing. It was right in front of me, about maybe 60 yards out or whatever. And as I got closer, it moved. And I look at the buoy, and I see there's like 15 or 20 guys holding on to it. And I'm like, what the hell's going on? And I had not been mistaken, because another guy was with me. He stopped. We both stopped, and we're treading water there. And we asked the guy in the canoe, what the hell's going on? Are we supposed to go around that? Because now this buoy has moved down upstream, which means if we have to go around it, we now have to swim against the current to try to make this turn. And you don't want to cut corners and things like that, because you can get disqualified. Also, personally, who wants to shorten up the race? It's not really what you're there to do. And the canoe guy was like, nope, you guys are good. Just make the turn, keep going. Fantastic. So as we're turning from the American River into the Sacramento, I hope I'm getting these right. I'll try to put a graphic up about how these rivers run. As we make that turn into the Sacramento River, the water temperature drops. It's got to be 20 degrees. It went 20 degrees Fahrenheit. It just dropped like a rock. And everybody's like, whoa, you can see people like, it was a shock. I was very glad I had on my booties, at least at this point. As we made that turn, because those booties come into play later, and not in a good way. I'll explain that later. But we turned, and the current was a little quicker. In fact, as we approached the end of the swim, they had canoes lined up so that we didn't go past the exit point, because the exit was into a corral where they could then, help us get out of the water and start running. So swim completed, and there definitely had to be a current, because that was not by a lot, but it's my fastest swim time for an Ironman. I forget the time. I think it was an hour and some change, which is slow in swim. In swim, I think somebody did the swim in like 28 minutes, 29 minutes, or something like that. But yeah, good swim. Felt good. Felt great coming out of the water. They did have what it's called strippers. As you jump out of the water, they've got volunteers who will help you get out of your wetsuit. Ideally, what you do is you pull it off down to your waist, you take the arms off and everything, and then you just lay down on the ground and they grab it and snap it off of you. Saves a ton of time. That in the past has been my biggest reluctance to wear a wetsuit, if it was optional, is the time it takes to take it off and losing that time in transition. With these strippers, it's one less thing to worry about. So I'd see my friends and family, partner in crime, as I get out of the water, get to wave at them. That was exciting. It's always great to see the fans in general, but certainly people you know. And that I will also bring up later as well, because that had an impact on my race, at least mentally, later on during the bike. So now it's time to get your bike bag, the blue bag, and get into they have a tent. They have a tent, side for women, side for men. And I think I have an issue with the whole tent and bag deal. And I think it negatively impacted my time for the race in a big way. The way that the tent is set up, you get your bag and go in, and it's almost like a social scene, right? You've got all these chairs lined up. People are everywhere, getting in where they fit in order to change and get ready for the bike. And you've got volunteers in there trying to be and they are very, very helpful. The volunteers are amazing at these races, and kudos to the volunteers. Thank you so much for everything that you've done, you do at these races. I've been a volunteer at an Ironman, but they're so helpful. So they're handing out water. But what this creates is a little bit of chaos, not the volunteers, but just everybody's everywhere. You got guys who are doing the full change. So you got naked dudes running around, and it can be distracting. As much as it's supposed to be helpful, it can be distracting. And in fact, my transition time ended up being 16 minutes, which is just not, even for me as a middle of the pack at best amateur, that's just too damn long to be in transition. Even though the generally speaking, swim to bike transition tends to be a little bit longer than bike to run, because of the amount of gear you're changing out and everything. I'm in a tri-suit under my wetsuit, so I try to change as few clothes as possible. All I had to do was put on my helmet and my cycling shoes and get out to my bike. So I did that, but I could tell I was taking forever. And part of it is, like I said, it's like a social scene. People are they're talking about the swim. People are taking their time, and it's working. If you're not focused specifically on getting your butt in there and out of there, you end up with a 16-minute transition time. And this is I was having no problems. I had no issues whatsoever. You throw your wetsuit and everything back into your bike bag, and you actually give that to somebody. They make it available at your station so that your Sherpa or your Super Sag, my partner in crime, can pick it up later while you're on the run. Anyway, I ran out, got on my bike, went out the bike out, got on my bike, was feeling great, saw the family one more time, saw partner in crime, took off, and started the bike. So the bike, again, pretty flat. I mean, that's probably the flattest ride I've ever done, especially over 112 miles. So the way this bike went was 28 miles out, 28 miles back into where you got your personal needs bag, then 28 miles out, 28 miles back, same route, same road. And conditions were, the roads were pretty good with an exception. And weather was great, but it was getting windy. And the later you get into the day, the windier it gets. People who were tracking me noticed, not just me, but everybody was slowing down at about the same point. That's where the second trip out, the wind was just brutal. The good thing is it was blowing in your face on the way out and not on the way back, so that you had a little bit of a tailwind coming back. Issues I had on the bike, about 18 miles in, I was getting some nutrition from my bottle, and something, my wife thinks this was a yellow jacket, stung the hell out of me on my leg, and it caused me to drop. It was so painful and took me by such surprise. I dropped my nutrition bottle. And the first thing anytime you're in a race like that or any kind of ride like that, the first thing that popped in my mind is, I hope I didn't screw anybody else up, that no one hit it or whatever. You will see during a ride all kinds of bottles and stuff, lights, things on the ground that had fallen off of people's bikes, maybe because of rough road or whatever. I got stung and dropped my bottle. I didn't hear anybody scream or cuss me out. I looked back, I glanced back, I kept going. That thing, that sting swole up, and it didn't go away for 3 weeks. So it was something vicious that stung me. Plus, I'm a little allergic to bee stings in general. So that was the first thing. That was only 18 miles in. Kept rolling. The pain was not fun. I don't think it impacted my ride too much, but it was definitely something on my mind, at least for the next few, couple 20, 30 miles. And then there was a section of the ride where the road went straight to hell. It was through this beautiful part of the ride in terms of foresty, trees, and shaded, and the whole bit. But the road was crap, and it was like riding over rumble strips on the expressway. And it was long. It was like 5 miles of this stuff, which doesn't sound like a lot until you realize it was 5 miles out, 5 miles back, 5 miles out, and 5 miles back. So it was 20 miles of riding on. When the pros went by during the first loop, I was amazed at how they were still going so fast, especially with those disc wheels and whatnot. They're lighter than me too, so that probably didn't hurt. But it was horrible road. Granted, I should be thankful it was only 20 out of the 112 miles, but that was definitely unnerving. It's not fun to ride like that for very long periods of time. Got through it. Again, if that's the worst thing that would happen, that would be great. The last thing I'll mention is my feet were burning. And I didn't really think about it until maybe 80 miles into the ride. And I'm like, why are my feet burning? Remember, I'm wearing my brand new cycling shoes, which I love, right? And I'm like, these shoes can't be doing this to me. What the hell's happening? So about 104 miles in, right? 8 miles left to go. I look down and I see this little black trim around the edge of my cycling shoe. I ride barefoot. I had forgotten to take off my booties from the swim when I got into my cycling shoe. So I rode 112 miles in my cycling shoes with neoprene swim booties on. Folks, don't ever do that. Not that you would, but I took that, when I got ready to get into my run gear, I took that booty off and my foot was completely, it looked like all dead skin, all dead white skin. It wasn't, I don't think, but I've been scraping dead skin off my feet now ever since the race. They were just in there sweating and dying, and my feet were, and that was just, again, I'm not blaming the tent. I'm not blaming the chaos. I had a 16-minute transition. So there's a lot of people says, well, that should have been one of the things you caught, my friend. Yeah, I agree 100%. Didn't catch it, rode a 112-mile bike ride in swim booties and cycling shoes. I got nothing else to say about that. So now I'm back at the bike. So remember, we left our bags, our run bags, at the bike. So there were no bike catchers at the end of the ride. And it's obvious that there are no bike catchers, get off your bike and go rack it. So we all did that. I did that. I racked my bike and started changing into my run gear out of this bag. Now the reason that's problematic for me is in a race where you know you're going to change at transition, you stack your gear in a certain order so that you can quickly put it on without even thinking about it. It's not in a bag. You've got your cycling stuff set up, you've got your run stuff set up, socks, boom, boom, boom. In a bag, I've got to go in there, find the socks, find the shoes. It's just not as efficient as far as I'm concerned. I know that impacted my T2 time, my second transition time. That was longer than I normally do. I've had second transitions under 3 minutes, which again, for an amateur, that's pretty good. This was not the case. So I've got this 16-minute T1, I've got this whatever minute, I'll put it up on the screen, T2. Both impacted my race. Oh, but before I get off of this, I do have to mention the other thing in the bike that kind of impacted me. And I'm gonna try to say this, and I'm gonna ask my partner in crime to chime in on this at some point. But my crew was not around at any other part during the bike. So this when I came back in from the first loop, that's where most people were, around seeing their athlete come in to get their personal needs bag, and my crew was nowhere. This was also where I mentioned that, you lose everything in that bag, but the volunteer that was helping me said, by the way, is there anybody here who can take this bag for you? Because then she's basically giving me an opportunity not to lose all the stuff I had in there, because I had bottles and whatever. And there was some people I'd met at the swim practice that were standing there who were waving, and I said, can you take my bag? And they took it. I never saw them again, so I still didn't get the stuff back. But my people weren't there. And I'm here to tell you, as exciting as it is to see your people during the race waving and cheering you on, as much energy as that gives you, it is equally as disheartening to not see them at all. Knowing that they're there, knowing they're at the race, and they're nowhere to be found. So that worked on my mind for the next 56 miles of that bike ride. And I was between sad and pissed. And I truly believe that it impacted my race because I was not as enthusiastic about it. Now, let me qualify this. My partner in crime is my biggest supporter in an Ironman, in triathlon, without question. And she has put up with a lot for me to train. She has always supported me. She's come out and sat on the side of a lake so I could practice swim. She's always been my Sherpa. She doesn't like that word, but that's what we call it, to pick up my bike while I'm on the run, including this race. So I am in no way admonishing her or anyone for not being there. I was just personally disappointed. And as I came in from the bike, they were there. I even had a friend who was in Vegas before this race. He flew in just to come see me race, which was amazing. No one was there. My friends' people weren't there. I didn't see anybody. Turns out, I found out later where they were. They had found themselves a restaurant that had a putt-putt golf. That had a putt-putt golf game. And they were drinking and putt-putt golfing. Ironman is a long, long day. And what you do while your athlete is out there spending, in my case, 13, 14 hours out on the course, you have to do stuff to keep busy, keep distracted, keep fed, rested, nourished, whatever. You got to drink. And so they were doing that. And And the tracking app is not perfect. The tracking app is, Ironman will tell you that in a heartbeat, the Ironman tracking app is not perfect. So you can miss your athlete because it's telling you that someone should be somewhere and they're not quite where they said it should be. And I think my crew got out to the bike turnaround. If they came out at all, they got out after I had already been through there because the app hadn't tracked me 100%. It's not, you're not wearing a GPS signal on you. They're doing estimates of your time. So I needed to mention that because I really believe that disappointment in me impacted my overall time because it impacted my enthusiasm negatively. All right, I'll just say that and leave it at that. And back to the run. So after racking my bike, getting my run gear on, this is the best I've felt after a ride. So I do believe I've gotten my issue with cramps under control. I did not cramp at all during this race. Usually it's either during the bike, late in the bike, or off the bike. I cramp up like crazy and have to work that out in the run. Did not cramp. My problem on the run was my legs hurt. And I think that may be a strength problem and one I'll address as I train up for future races. But so I didn't get to run as much as I wanted to. Plus, it got dark a lot earlier than I thought it would. And some of the parts on this course were pitch black. A lot of runners had lights. Now, I had a headlight. I had a headlamp that I used in transition to see what I was doing because it's dark when you start the day, but I didn't have it with me. So there were places on the course where I could not see anything. And a lot of places on the course that were not regular flat asphalt or anything. They were like rocks and dirt and uneven places where your foot could fall off. And I was very tentative about falling and busting my behind, basically. So again, these are not excuses, folks. These are realities of the race that impact your overall performance. As sore as my legs were, I did find that when I was at well-lit places with a lot of people, I could run for some reason. If there were people there, it's like, I don't want to see them to see me walking. So I wasn't as in much pain as I was telling myself I was. I think I kind of gave up a little bit because my legs were hurting as bad as they were in places where the ground was uneven or I couldn't see. But if it was well lit, like near in town, where the people were, I was able to run. And there's actually places where you can see that on my times, where my time would, I remember my sister even telling me later, she's like, oh, he's picking up speed. She was texting my mother using WhatsApp on a group chat. Oh, he's picking up, his pace is picking up. This was the best I felt after a race of this length ever. I think my fitness was at the best it's been. Not the perfect, but I don't know that you ever get to perfect. And so overall, happy with the race. I did set a PR, albeit by less than 2 minutes. But man, where could I have made up that time? Transition. And then kind of bittersweet, dubious, I did stop at porta potties. And that's actually a good thing. One, because I don't pee on myself, so I stopped when I had to pee. But the fact that I had to pee, that is a good thing. One of my old coaches, I tell him, I never have to pee on these races because I sweat so much. It's like, that's not a good thing. You need to have to pee. You have to be taking in enough fluid so that you need to urinate at some point during the race. And I actually had a few porta potty stops that even though they cut into my time, it's like I'm hydrating properly. I'd much rather lose a few minutes in the porta potty than cramp up on the bike, because it's always the groin, which is like pulling a cold rubber band, or off the bike as I'm trying to start a run. Keep those cramps. I'll take the time in the porta potty, and maybe one day I'll work up the, to pee on myself. I don't know. So there you have it, folks. That was the day. I came down the chute in good spirits. I was able to walk afterwards. I was not in any kind of overwhelming pain. I was able to go get my food. They had food trucks at the end of this was a new one on me. At the end of the ride, in the feeding area for the athletes, the food that the race had was like chips and bananas and, you know, diet pop. But these food trucks, they even had a beer truck. I generally don't drink alcohol, and especially not after a race anymore. I had my lesson on that in 2018. But man, they had these food trucks with the best food. It was really good stuff. And then that was it. It was a great day. I finished at 13:50:51, 13 hours, 50 minutes, 51 seconds, I believe was my overall time. Do I feel I could have done better? We always feel like we could have done better. I will mention that my buddy, Mark, did not finish. He was just a few miles out, maybe 2 or 3 miles out from making the cutoff. But he thinks this was his performance, and I'm holding that it was, he ran into some really unfortunate technical difficulties. His tire was rubbing as he got ready to get on the bike, and he spent something like 20-something minutes in transition with the repair guy, getting that taken care of. And then some of the run, in terms of how they had it labeled for you know, how they had the mile markers posted. There was one particular place right at mile 8, where before you saw the 8 mile marker, you saw one that said 17. And long story short, that was confusing. He got turned around and ended up probably adding 2 or 3 miles. So those two things alone would have brought him in on time. He had the fitness, and I won't talk too much about him. I'd let him tell that story if he ever wants to. And then Katie came in at her expected time, so she finished the race. And so overall, great day. No complaints. And even after the race, there were people coming up to me saying, "You don't have to be fastest. Just be fearless." It was fantastic to know that people actually recognized me and knew the channel. So that's my recap of the race day. If you guys have other questions, throw them in the comments. I'd be happy to answer. I try to answer every comment. Right now, it's really easy because there's not a ton of people following and not a ton of people leaving comments. But I'm going to go on and look at some comments now. I wanted to post something prior to getting back into it, but like I've already been recording new stuff. I am training again, and I'm feeling good about next season. Haven't decided what races I have kind of mentally, but until I pay money, I tend to keep that to myself. So with that said, this is Kenny E. in Florida on Thanksgiving Day. I won't be training today. I'll be eating a lot of food today. And in the meantime, remember, you don't have to be fastest. Just be fearless.
No, I ain't giving you up. Giving you up, no.